Kenny Moore II carries the Indianapolis Colts to victory in Carolina. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Colts fans. Welcome to this episode following a Sunday victory in Carolina. And thank you for making us your first post-game listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl, and post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Hello, everyone. I'm Zach Hicks here of horseshoehuddle.com, your resident film analyst over there, and your favorite co-host here on Locked On Colts. We are celebrating Victory Sunday here as Indianapolis Colts defeated the Carolina Panthers 27-13 on the road. The Colts remain one of the best teams in the NFL on the road this season. Now, if we could just bring some of that magic back home so they can win some home games this year, that'd be great. But nonetheless, I mean, they won this game against Carolina, a team that's very much had their struggles this year, but the Colts came into this week with a 3-game losing streak. It's nice to get back in the win column. And obviously, there was one player that really helped the Colts get there. We're going to talk about him a lot on today's show. So to kick it off, again, we're going to talk about the stars of the day, what the biggest storylines are from this Colts victory. Then we're going to dive into the Colts offense, why it had some struggles. And then we're going to close it out with the Colts defense desperately needing this kind of performance and really standing on their head all game long. But to kick it off again, Kenny Moore II was the superstar today. Best slot corner in football. Absolutely proved it yet again against the Carolina Panthers. He had 2 interceptions in this one. And not only did he have the 2 interceptions, he had 2 interceptions returned for touchdowns, which I believe if you look at, there was like a bunch of ESPN stats and info and Mike Chappell put it out there and stuff like that. It's the first time in Indianapolis Colts history that they've had a player with 2 pick sixes in a single game, again, in the history of the franchise. So Kenny Moore making his mark on the history of the Colts right there today against the Carolina Panthers. He was simply fantastic all game long. Everything that he was doing absolutely shut down in coverage, coming up and making a lot of plays in the run game. I believe he had a tackle for a loss at one point in this game as well. And then obviously on both those pick sixes, really, really strong plays from him. Late throw to the flat by Bryce Young. You have to make quarterbacks pay for that. You cannot let quarterbacks get away with late throws to the flat. And obviously, Kenny did not let that slide there at the end of the first half. And then the second half, again, you can't throw the ball high on screen passes. You got to make quarterbacks pay for that. And Kenny Moore, yet again, was Johnny on the spot there, got that pick, returned it for a touchdown. And honestly, it's a huge thing that he returned both those for touchdowns because with the way the Colts offense was playing, I don't know if they're going to score touchdowns on those possessions following the interception if Kenny doesn't bring those back. So it's big that he got 7 points for the Colts on both of those because those ended up being the deciding factor in this one. The Colts won by 14 points that were scored off of Kenny Moore, the second interceptions in this game. So Kenny, obviously the superstar player for the Colts, did some great things out there. But I did want to shout out another player today, DeForest Buckner, defensive tackle, obviously our All-Pro, one of our best players on the Indianapolis Colts team. He had 4 tackles in this one, 2 tackles for a loss, a sack, multiple pressures, 2 pass breakups where he batted 2 balls down at the offensive line of scrimmage. Did some really, really good things out there. He looked like a superstar all game long. And the Colts desperately needed that because I think if you were to chart who the top 4 defenders are on this Colts team coming into the season, or at least for the first month of the season this year, it was DeForest Buckner, Kenny Moore, Zaire Franklin, and Grover Stewart. 2 of those guys were down today. 2 of those guys were not out there for the Colts. They did not have Zaire Franklin. They didn't have Grover Stewart. So it came down to those other 2 star players having a star performance for the Colts to win this one. Kenny Moore obviously is the superstar in this one, but DeForest Buckner was fantastic as well. And those, again, you need star power in the NFL, and those 2 players really showed up today for the Colts in this road victory over the Carolina Panthers. Another shout-out player here too, Seguna Luby, had his first career interception, had a good amount of snaps in this one, filling in for Zaire Franklin as the passing down Mike linebacker in the middle of the field. I thought he had a really, really strong game. He had a couple missed tackles on some Bryce Young scrambles, which you obviously want to see cleaned up. But the interception was a really nice play. Got some good depth on his zone drops and took away some of those middle of the field throws. And then obviously, again, on the interception, he was able to drop back into coverage, turn and run with that tight end, get his head around and come away at the interception. Just a fantastic play by a young linebacker. And obviously, when we get to the defense, we'll talk about, again, Segunalubi being more of the passing down linebacker over a certain veteran here on the Colts team. But yeah, Segunalubi did a really good job in pass coverage all game long. The Colts defense in general had a great game in pass coverage. We'll talk about that in our final segment. But one more big storyline I think we need to talk about here in the beginning, and then again we'll transition to it more in segment 2. Gardner Minshew, man, that was a brutal game. Obviously, you want to be positive. The Colts won. They won handedly on the road against a bad team, but they still won handedly on the road. But you're not going to win many games with your quarterback playing the way that Gardner Minshew did in this one. He was 17 of 26 for 127 yards and a touchdown. I believe the longest pass play in the game for the Colts was a 19-yard pass to Drew Ogletree in the first half. They just really didn't get anything going whatsoever in the passing game. They couldn't throw the Panthers out of their base defense, which made the run game suffer quite a bit as well. And a lot of it really came down to the play of Gardner Minshew. It really wasn't many other players on offense that were struggling. Receivers were open. The offensive line was holding up in pass pro. Like, they were doing the best they could against a bare front with eight men in the box. It really comes down to your quarterback needs to be able to throw teams out of base defense. They need to be able to throw teams out of that bare front and get them into more spread looks. And Gardner Minshew just couldn't do it today. He was feeling pressure when it wasn't there. He was bailing from clean 4-man pressures where there really wasn't anybody getting after him at all. He was bailing from the pocket. It was just a really, really rough day for a veteran quarterback. And luckily, the Colts didn't need him much in this one because of Kenny Moore. Kenny Moore was just fantastic. DeForest Buckner was fantastic. And honestly, the whole defense had a great game outside of that one drive to start the second half. So they didn't need Gardner Minshew to have a good game, for lack of a better term here. But it really is a concerning type of game where, the Colts are going overseas to play against New England Patriots next week. They just can't have a repeat of this performance from Gardner Minshew in that level of game. I know the Patriots have not been good whatsoever this year, but, they were better than the Panthers, I think. Maybe not. They might not be better than the Panthers, but you still can't have this type of performance from your starting quarterback or from, again, I know your backup quarterback thrust into a starting role, but you just can't have this type of performance if you want to win games in the NFL. And if we're looking at the Colts right now, sitting at 4-5 with a fairly lax second half of the year, pretty easy schedule down the stretch, they are prime position to make the playoffs if Gardner Minshew can play much better than what he looked today. He just can't look like this going forward if the Colts would have any chance at getting to 500 or getting into the playoffs as a wild card team. He just can't play a game like this. But I don't want to muddy the celebration of this win. I obviously want to celebrate what the Colts defense did and what the Colts overall did in this one. But we do need to talk about Gardner Minshew. We're going to continue this conversation about him in segment 2 as we talk about the Colts offense. But yeah, so coming up, guys, we're going to talk all about this Colts offense, how it just wasn't their best day overall, but still 27 points. I mean, you can't complain too much, I guess. We're going to talk about that here coming up in just a second. Guys, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the best access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Just go to LinkedIn.com, add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Guys, I have been hiring for my day job a couple times throughout my career, and honestly, LinkedIn is such a great resource to use. You can just find so much information on there, and you can really separate the good from the bad candidates for what you're looking for. So simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, guys, so we're going to talk about this Colts offense. And again, I would have loved to have just talked more about the Colts defense here, but we have this typical rhythm that we go with our post-game shows. And typically we've started to talk about the offense before the defense because it's the more positive aspect of the conversation in these post games. Obviously, the defense has struggled this year. The offense has scored 20 plus points in every single game. And yes, they kept this as a 20 plus point game, but again, we know Kenny Moore contributed big time to that in this one. So the Colts offense really, really struggled. The running backs, or just the running game in general, only managed 78 rushing yards on 30 carries. Passing game, Michael Pittman Jr. had a solid game, 8 catches for 64 yards. Josh Downs had 1 catch for 10 yards before leaving early with a knee injury. Drew Ogletree flashed. He had 1 catch for 19 yards, and then he left early with a foot injury. So just not much generated whatsoever on offense for the Colts. I believe they only had 3.2 yards per play on offense, which is simply abysmal. You just can't have that in the NFL unless you're having a superstar performance by your nickel corner on the other side of the ball. So it's just something that really can't be repeated by this Colts offense. But luckily, they got this out of their system in a game where they could have this type of performance. But one thing I really did want to throw out there when we're talking about this Colts offense, because I've seen some people mention, poor scheme or poor performances by the offensive line or pass catchers or running backs. I think when you watch this game, and I think it's going to be really apparent on film when you rewatch this game, all the issues, or majority of the issues of the Colts offense in this one, just began and ended with the quarterback play. The quarterback play was just not good enough at all in this game. And here's the thing, like Gardner Minshew has mostly been throughout his career a player who can beat the blitz, who's a smart quarterback who can get the ball out hot and get the ball out against the blitz. And he's a quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over. I mean, he'll fumble a little bit, but he typically doesn't throw that many interceptions, 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. So when you look at him this year or these last couple games, that's just like the opposite of what he's been. It's been a lot of interceptions. He's been really fidgety against the blitz. He's kind of just been seeing ghosts in the backfield all game long. I mean, I really think this was one of the worst games I've ever seen him play, even going back to his college career, where even in his college career, even if he had the yips at times, he could still get his back foot down and deliver a strike to his first read. In this game, he really couldn't even get to his first read. It was just like, it was 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. Oh my gosh, what's going on? Let me run around in the backfield and fall down as I'm running out of the pocket or something. It was, Hans says it best here. Minshew looked like a lost puppy in the pocket, unfortunately. Like he did. It's simply what happened. And as a result, as Joe's asking here in the comments, what happened to Alec Pierce? Alec Pierce was wide open on multiple third down plays. I mean, there was 2 targets he had on third downs in this game where the ball was just at his feet. Like, as a receiver, what do you do in those situations? Even look at Michael Pittman Jr., who had 8 catches for 64 yards, a really solid game. A majority of his receptions came on RPO plays where Minshew pulled it out and just got it to him on quick screens. Like, they weren't like downfield passing concepts, or they weren't him working down the field, because Minshew just was unable to do that in this game. Like, outside of the downfield pass to Drew Ogletree at the end of the first half, there really wasn't anything working past the line of scrimmage for Gardner Minshew in this game. He just had a bad game. Like it's not even a bad game, because like the offense was grounded to a halt because of how he played. Like, and the thing is too, like he didn't turn the ball over. So as a result, he kind of won in that regard. Like, if he turned the ball over, the Colts probably lose this game, because, that turnovers are just killer in the NFL. So like, he didn't turn the ball over, so the Colts still had a chance, but because he could not complete any simple pass in this game, the Colts offense was just grounded to a complete halt. There was just nothing going on the offense. And as we saw in the second half, the Colts were running the ball fairly well in the first half. Jonathan Taylor was getting downhill. Zach Moss came in for a couple runs where he was getting, a little over 4 yards a carry. In the second half, the Panthers come out. They're going bare front. They're going 5 men on the defensive line. They're going 2 linebackers, just blitzing the A gaps. And then they're bringing their safety down into the box. And they're saying, Gardner, beat this one-on-one coverage. Just hang in the pocket. They're not even blitzing him. Like, they blitzed him every now and then in the second half, but they really weren't even blitzing him. It was a 4-man rush, and they were dropping into zone with these bigger packages and to just stop the run. And he couldn't even get the ball out of his hands accurately whatsoever into windows. Guys were open. Guys were wide open in this one. It's just, Gardner Minshew had a really, really bad game, like a really bad game. Again, luckily there weren't turnovers on top of that. There were a couple that were nearly turnovers on top of it, but I think when you look back at this game for the offense, like, sure, you can point out a couple plays here and there. The Quentin Nelson illegal man downfield certainly hurt that drive there. A couple other penalties hurt the drive. A couple other missed reads by the running backs at times kind of hurt drives. But for the most part, the whole reason why this Colts offense fell apart was Gardner Minshew had a really, really bad game. Like that's the beginning and the end of it. And I don't know if he's going to bounce back. You know, it kind of like what Han's asking here. Do you think he can bounce back from this, or this can be a continuous downfall? I don't know, because I think if you look at the Colts offense the last 2 weeks, they've been really, really sluggish on offense. And a lot of that is Gardner Minshew really struggling. But traditionally throughout his NFL career, he's been a solid quarterback who can come in and play fairly well and get some things done and keep the offense operational. He was barely operational in this game. Like, there were times where they can move the ball a little bit, but he really wasn't operational at all in this game. So I don't know. Maybe it's something where you just got to struggle. It's a slugfest until you get to the bye week, and then you can kind of recalibrate from there. But as of right now, I think that the trend with the way that he's played the last 2 weeks is not really positive whatsoever. And the Colts can't really lean on their run game because they don't have any threat of passing the ball with how poorly Minshew is playing. You know, even if you go back to 2021 with the Carson Wentz downfall late in that season, there was still somewhat of a threat of the Colts throwing the ball. So boxes were a little bit lighter against Jonathan Taylor when Jonathan Taylor was having that superstar season. With Gardner Minshew right now, there's really not much of that threat in the box. You know, that's not that much of a threat to get those defenses out of those heavy boxes. So I just don't know what the Colts can do. I don't really know how Shane Steichen can work around this with Gardner Minshew, because when it comes to the NFL, you have to throw defenses out of base. You have to throw defenses out of their base defensive set, get them into lighter looks, and then run the ball on those lighter looks. If you can't throw teams out of base defense, your offense can't operate in today's NFL. You just simply can't do it. So, yeah, Gardner Minshew really needs to step up next week. I think the O-line was fine in this one. I think the pass catchers were pretty solid overall. Obviously, the health of Josh Downs and Drew Ogletree is a big factor going forward, but I think everything was really there for the Colts offense to have a solid day. It was just he had a really rough game. Gardner Minshew had a really rough game, and I really hope he can bounce back going forward, because he's the Colts' only answer at quarterback right now. And if they want to make the playoffs or be a 500 team this year, he really needs to bounce back from what we just saw on Sunday here against the Carolina Panthers. But don't worry, guys. We're not going to keep this like an upsetting show or like a down on the Colts type show. I know the offense had a bad day, but we're going to close out today's show by talking all about this Colts defense and how the defense all week, how I was saying they were a broken defense with no answers, all of a sudden put together just a masterful performance against a putrid Carolina Panthers offense, but still a masterclass performance. We're going to talk about that here coming up in just a second. Colts fans, score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning a $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL and kick off the NFL season. Guys, FanDuel is awesome. You can go there and talk and just pick all your Colts players. You can be as biased as possible. And, you know, this week you would have won some pretty big money with the way that the Colts played against the Carolina Panthers. So make sure you guys go over to FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Colts fans, so we're diving into this Colts defense. And yeah, this Colts defense last week against the New Orleans Saints went into that game at home against a putrid New Orleans Saints offense. And they were just getting rocked all game long. Tony Brown Jr. obviously had a huge, just a massive bad game against the Saints. And then the rest of the Colts defense looked terrible as well. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop anything over the middle. They had coverage breakdowns at safety. So when it came down to projecting for this game against Carolina Panthers, you know, you're looking at the pregame stuff and you're like, look, the Panthers offense is just a train wreck right now. They have nothing going for them. But what the Colts defense just did against New Orleans Saints, I have no hope for them even stopping the Panthers. Well, you know, the Colts defense came out and they just had a fantastic day overall. They obviously only held the Panthers to 13 points. Bryce Young threw 3 interceptions, obviously 2 for Kenny Moore, 1 for Saguna Luby. Run defense, you know, I think the success rate was much better than what the yards per carry was. They still allowed 22 carries for 97 yards on the ground to running backs. Bryce Young also added another 40 plus yards on scrambles. But I do think overall the Colts defense had a really strong day. Gus Bradley did a good job, I think, in this one of mixing his coverage for the most part. He dropped in some more too high looks. He had some more man coverage looks, brought some exotic blitzes there in the second half, and really had Bryce Young just on his heels all game long. The Colts defensive line, fantastic game overall. I think they were getting pressure left and right in this one outside that one drive in the second half where the Panthers went down and scored a touchdown. The Colts D-line had a really great day. DeForest Buckner, Adetomi Adebore, Dio Dangbo all had individual sacks. And then Kwity Paye and Eric Johnson both had a half sack in this game as well. So again, really, really strong day for the Colts defensive line. And then the two players I really want to shout out, aside from the two superstars we shout out in the first segment, Darrell Baker Jr. and Jalen Jones. Those guys had great games. Obviously, Jalen Jones, we all saw late in the game how he was just getting feisty out there, coming up and making some big hits, had a couple pass breakups as well. Really strong day from him. But Darrell Baker Jr. is a player where early in the season, especially after that Texans game, how we were all saying, I was saying too, like, I don't know how this player bounces back from this. And then he had that disastrous ending against the Cleveland Browns where he had those multiple penalties against him and really struggled on that final drive. Darrell Baker Jr. got the start again in this one because of injuries, because Tony Brown was even worse than him last week against New Orleans Saints. And he had a strong day. I mean, I really can't count any plays where I was thinking like, oh man, here's Darrell Baker Jr. again, giving up a big play or giving up this. I mean, even on the coverage breakdown on the little shock route that they had to Hayden Hurst, that was more of the safety just misplaying that route. It's more on Rodney Thomas not playing that route correctly. I thought Darrell Baker Jr. did a good job on that play. He was taking away the flat, taking away the underneath. Sure, maybe get a little bit more depth just to force the quarterback's eyes off of that shock route, but it is what it is. I think he overall played his assignment pretty well. But yeah, Darrell Baker Jr. came up, made some good tackles in the run game and in the passing game, had a couple of pass breakups or a couple of plays where he pinched receivers to the sidelines. And then Jalen Jones, I guess you can kind of put the touchdown catch on him because they were in cover 2 and he abandoned that little flat area there. But, he's trying to get depth. He's trying to take away options in the end zone. It was a scramble drill, so it's a little bit tougher there for your cornerback. But overall, really good day from the two outside corners. I mean, we're talking about coming into the year, cornerback 4 and cornerback 5, on the roster. I know Baker Jr. started at the beginning of the year, but you know what I mean? Like Dallas Flowers, Kenny Moore, Juju Brents, those are really your guys coming into the year. So you're looking at cornerback 4 and 5 really having strong days for the Colts today. So really positive days for both those guys. The Colts really needed that. They needed their outside corners to have strong days. I thought Julian Blackmon had a pretty good day overall too. Made some good things happen in the run game. If we're looking at linebackers against Agun Halubi, really strong day. So yeah, overall, really good day for the Colts defense. They needed this. They needed this so bad because if you're looking at the Colts schedule to finish this season, they play a lot of really good defenses. They play against Atlanta. They play against Tennessee again. They play against Houston, who I know Houston had a bad day today on defense, but they play against some pretty good defenses down the stretch. But they play against some putrid offenses on the other side. Again, Atlanta, they play against the Buccaneers offense Baker Mayfield's not horrendous this year, but still Baker Mayfield at quarterback. They play against the Patriots this next week. They play against some offenses where this Colts defense kind of needs to carry the Colts to victory again if they want to get to 500, if they want to get into that playoff race. So the Colts defense needed this desperately to get back some confidence, to get back some moxie there on that side of the ball. And it was really good to see what they were able to do, even though they were shorthanded, being down Grover Stewart, being down Zaire Franklin, being down Juju Brents, still had a really, really good day on that side of the ball. I think, Bryce Young's not the most NFL ready quarterback right now. He's really, really struggling back there. He's kind of seeing ghosts in the backfield as well. And the Colts were great to capitalize on a few of his really bad mistakes. Obviously, again, Kenny Moore on both those pick sixes were just disastrous mistakes that a quarterback can't make. But look, the Colts have to capitalize on that. That's part of playing defense in the NFL is capitalizing on those types of mistakes. So really, really positive day from the Colts defense overall. And one more thing I want to touch on before we close out today's show is the big elephant in the room, is all week we've been hearing the Shaquille Leonard wants to play more on defense, more on pass coverage downs, and with Zaire Franklin being out in this game, would he have a chance to start as the Mike linebacker on those pass coverage downs? And what we saw in this game was it was Ogunlolubi who went out there instead of Shaquille Leonard. And, I want to open this up to the comment sections for after this video post and the comment section that you guys are talking now. What did you guys think about that? Because personally, I think it was the right call. I mean, I'm not trying to be revisionist history here. I kind of said it in the first quarter as well in this game. I thought Ogunlolubi made more sense being out there as the Mike. He had worked at Mike all off season long, where Shaquille Leonard only worked at will. So he doesn't really know that position super well. And then, to really address the crux of the issue, Gus Bradley wants athletes on the field. He wants explosive, high-level athletes on the field. And that's just not what Shaquille Leonard is, especially compared to someone like Ogunlolubi. Ogunlolubi flies all over the field. I mean, he had multiple tackles around the line of scrimmage. The interception, I don't know if that's a play that Shaquille Leonard can make right now because of how stiff he is trying to turn and work down the field. So I thought it was the right decision, especially if you're going to call in some blitzes. I mean, a couple of the blitzes, Olubi's coming in there like Zaire Franklin and just bulldozing offensive tackles to get guys free. Like, for that type of role, Ogunlolubi made way more sense. Even Grant Stewart might have made more sense because of what those guys can do as athletes coming downhill. That's just not what Shaquille Leonard is anymore, or what he is right now. So we'll see what kind of comes of this going forward. If Shaquille Leonard talks to the media yet again and talks about how he was upset he didn't get out there, but it's hard to argue with results. I mean, Ogunlolubi had a good day. The Colts defense had a good day, and overall, this is the best the defense has looked in general in terms of staying in their zone positioning and not getting beat down the field, aside from the one broken coverage play. So I don't know. We'll see what comes of this. I think it was the right decision by the Colts. I mean, even more in hindsight, but even during the game, I thought Ogunlolubi made way more sense out there at Mike than Shaquille Leonard. But I don't know. We'll see what happens to Shaquille Leonard going forward. I understand him wanting to get out there, and I understand Colts fans wanting to see their former star player getting back on the field. But the truth of the matter is, he's not outplaying EJ Speed. He's not outplaying Zaire Franklin. And honestly, is he outplaying Ogunlolubi right now? Like, no. Like, he's not. Like, it's hard to say right now. It's really hard to say that because he was so good, but he doesn't have the feel. He doesn't have the zone coverage ability. He doesn't have the tenacity or the athleticism right now to really play over those other guys on this defense. So this will be something we'll talk about throughout the week, I'm sure. You guys let us know in the comment section what you think. Did the Colts make the right decision by putting Ogunlolubi more out there than Shaquille Leonard on those passing downs? But hey, look, in hindsight, in retrospect, it made sense, and the Colts got the win. So we'll talk about that all week here. Colts fans, thank you for joining me for this live post-game show. It was a blast talking Colts and getting back on the win column. I mean, gosh, we needed this so bad. 3 straight losses, come out and beat Carolina 27-13, just dominate a lesser opponent. The Colts desperately needed this. So Everdares, don't worry. We'll be back tomorrow morning to talk even more Colts and keep celebrating this victory, Victory Monday. And if you guys don't already, make sure you are following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on Twitter. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We'd love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here bright and early on Tuesday morning.